Hi, welcome to the first video of my 5-day pastel challenge, working on a dramatic pastel sky. Before we begin, what I'd like to do is just talk to you about the key focus for today's session, and that's going to be about the pressure you apply with the pastels. So we're going to go through, creating your palette, applying the pastel to the paper, but the crucial thing here is going to be making sure that your pressure of the pastel isn't too heavy-handed. You're going to be going in with a very light pressure, quite delicate and transparent layers. So holding the flat of the pastel or the side of the pastel so you get a flat mark, and then building up the layers gradually. So you want to be using it just slowly in sweeping movements across the surface so you can see the paper underneath and you can see layers of pastel building up. So not too much too soon. The reason for that is we want to build quite a lot of layers and really get those colours mixing. And if you go in too heavy too soon with the pastel, it means you'll struggle later on to really get those final details on top. So keep the pressure delicate and keep it light, and don't use the tip of the pastel yet. So a half stick this size is about the right sort of size. So if you've got a large stick, unfortunately you need to snap them. I know that's painful to contemplate, but you really want something about this width just for the size of the paper. It's the right sort of size to work with, and that's what we're going to be doing. So we're going to start the practical demonstration. Let's get aprons on and let's get messy. So I've set my space up ready for working, and I've got the pastels laid out next to me, and I've got the sky set sitting here. As you can see, some Unison's beautiful colours ranging through these blues and greys into these warm tones. We're going to use quite a few of these. And I've got my empty lid box I'm going to use to place things in next to my strip that's organised, ready for doing colour checking and doing colour sampling. The first thing to do is to just get a basic layout on there. Now, I don't tend to do a great deal of drawing out. I know some people do. It's up to you what your personal choice is. What I'm going to do is just choose a neutral shade, and I'm just going to quickly sketch in where that hillside cuts across the piece here. I'm using quite a pale shade there. I don't want it to stand out too much at this stage. Now, it might be this landscape changes. We might put a hillside through here, put some movement. There's a track through here on this field, for example, I know is there, even though it's not in the photograph. It's where we walk the dogs, so I know it's there. And I might just change that dynamic there a bit and possibly put a distant hill in. We'll come to that later. But for now, I like to work quite flexibly and just see how it develops and changes. But I'm going to just map out where these banks of cloud are here, just to get a guideline for where to place things. As you can see, extremely precise drawing. So don't waste time doing a great deal of detail, because the minute you put pastel paper in my technique, it's going to disappear. Having done that, what I want to do now is start to organize the palette. What we're doing here is arranging the palette so that we have a collection of colors that are fairly harmonious to start off with. And you can see this selection here are very harmonious. This one here is definitely standing out as a bit greenish against these yellows. Let's put that over there for now. And then we've got this lot here. Now, this lemon color is going to be nice with some of these clouds, as is this warm, slightly peachy, pinky, beigey color, whatever you want to call it. But we're then going to use some of these purple shades as well, and some of these blues. Now, if we jump straight from the lemons into the blues or nearby, when you do the blending technique, and end up making green. So we need to think about ensuring we've got a bridging color between them. So some of these shades here, which are more of a lilac rather than a blue, will help buffer between and be a bridging color between these areas, so you won't make a green or a nasty brown color or something. The same with some of these pink shades may also work well for that. But as we start to put marks on the paper itself, you'll see what I'm talking about and how that works. So just remind yourself about bridging colors, and it's fairly important. So we've got this yellow shade here, and we've got that warm shade. So I'm hoping you can see when I do the mark making on the paper, which is harder to see with the actual pastels, but you can see how the color changes and transitions through different tints and shades, and how important it is to have things like this area here, which will be the bridging colors between this area and this area, because these things at this opposite end mixed directly together will give us things like greens or browns, but these will be our buffer zone, our bridging zone. This is our base. We're going to build on top. We'll add more color in, and we'll keep going from there, and we'll see how that progresses. We're not thinking about, by the way, the landscape area yet. We're just thinking about the sky at this point, just in case I wasn't clear about that. So I then like to put the colours on the surface, because it sometimes, as you well know, if you're into pastels like we all are, that you can pick a colour out and think that looks great, that's just right. You put it on and go, no, that's not right at all, dreadful. So having this sort of selection of our base palette here, I can then check colours against it and nearby, and this, believe me, will become a lot messier than this. It looks impressively tidy for me anyway at the moment, even with a finger mark. That's an improvement for me. Getting mucky already, which is lovely. So base palette, sketched out where things go, and then we start to apply the pastel itself. So I'm just going to work on the side of the pastel, so it's very much using a flat mark making at this stage. Now I'm going to start with a sort of mid-range colour. I think I'm going to start with this one here, which is this second or third one down. Well, that's very pale here. So I'm just going to block in where some of these clouds go through here. So I'm just looking at the image and just doing some flat mark making. Now I'm using quite big sweeping gestures. So I'm thinking about the direction of the clouds. So we look back at the original photograph, what we have here is this kind of direction through here. It's sort of moving this way and up that way. So I'm just putting the mark making on, following those kind of directions. So we have that one there, and then we're going to use a bit of the lemon with that as well, because obviously it's a lot warmer than we see it on the original. So it's a lot more vivid, I mean. And then put a bit more through there. And then I'm going to go in, and by the way, I don't normally do this, it's just for demonstration purposes. If you work this precisely when you're doing it on your own, excellent, well done you. But it's not what I normally work like. I'm always chucking pastels around, then not be able to find them afterwards. If that sounds like you, then you are on the same wavelength as me. Now I'm going to start to put some darker colours in, just thinking about where some of the darker areas of the cloud are. I'm not worrying about where exactly the hill is. That'll come later. We'll cover that up with the hill later when the sky's in there. And there's some movement through here with a bit of loose clouds. I want to get some interesting mark making through there. Okay, now I think that one's on the next thing there. So we're going to go into some of these more blue shades through here. So I'm going to use a fairly lilac shade there, because I just like using this colour with yellow. So already I'm changing the colours that I see in front of me and not being too precise with that. So you feel free with your interpretation to be flexible as well. Now I'm overlapping with the blue. I'm just putting some blue in with that as well. Now, when you are putting your colours on, you do overlap straight away. So it's not a question of a block of colour here, a block there, a separate colour here. They overlap straight away as you go along. All you've got to bear in mind is, if you're putting something like blue on, for example, and I'm approaching the blue and I've got a bit of yellow here, and I've got a bit of this more orange tinted beige here, then I want to make sure that I don't end up getting a green or something. So I need to go back and use what's my pinkish shade, and use my pinkish shade near where the blue is, so that that bridges that transition between the yellow and the blue, so I don't get too much green. Right, okay, so did I put that in the wrong place? I think I did. Now it's that one, no, that's not that one. There we go again. So it begins. Which pastel was that? Did I even put that one there? Who knows? Right, let's put that to one side. Is that one? That's the darker purple here. So let's put a bit more of that darker purple into these areas here. What I'm doing is adding loads of colour on, which eventually will be mixed with each themselves and other colours put on top, and that'll end up creating some lovely interesting tints and shades. So we're just getting in there, having fun with colour, and as long as you choose harmonious colours that are going to blend well together, then it'll be okay. That is the theory anyway. I might just put a bit of this through here just for the sake of putting something on here, so that visually it's not a big white square. Well, I say square, a big white patch here, because it just throws your colour balance off, doesn't it? It's really hard to judge the colours and what needs to be done if you've got a giant area of white against what you're working. So some of this lovely, this is a gorgeous dark purple, isn't it lovely? Look at that colour, I love that. And then a patch of that through here. Now this is quite a dominant colour, So it's going on very quickly and easily. So I need to make sure I don't put too much at this stage and just put a dash through here, a bit more up this top corner, touch towards the top here. Wow, that's more than a touch there, but that will be okay. We'll work with that. And then a bit more over that way. So again, a bit more of that will come through here as well, but again, we'll come back to that. You can see why drawing out is a waste of time in this technique, can't you? I'm just putting in where those lighter bits of cloud come through. So you can see I'm holding it like this, flat of the pastel straight onto the surface and just building that mark making on there. And it's very pale down towards it. This is a very pale lilac shade, but anything like a pale lilac would do, or a very pale pink would do. And there's some interesting fluffy clouds through here, so let's just put some rougher mark making into there. Let's put that on the additional ones here. So it's just a slightly paler tint than some of these warmer ones here. You can achieve the same thing by using the warm ones and then putting the white on top of them if you need to. Okay, so what we've got is the base layers put on, and we've got some movement put through and some areas of cloud put in. There are some gaps, so I'm going to start filling up any gaps, and also I want to point out something in particular about the sky. Now at the moment we've got this pale lilac shade transitioning to a slightly more blue shade, and then higher up it's going to be slightly darker blue again, so you can get a bit more of the darker blue in here. But I'm not going to put too much of that darker blue in yet. Add that onto my additional colours I'm using. Oh, so organised. Right, okay, so that's that there. Now the reason for that is there's a lot of lemon and tinted clouds around it, and if you have too much blue next to it, as we do the blend, it's going to, it's going to get in there. It's going to end up making it slightly greenish. So we're just going to put that in later and just deal with getting the first blend on here initially. Let me just go and fill in any other gaps and just make sure I've got enough coverage, because I'm going to go over and blend. Now, if you're not sure if you've got enough on the surface to blend, there are a couple of things you can do. The first thing you can do, obviously, is you can try. You can try and rub it in and see if anything happens. If nothing happens, guess what? You haven't got enough on there. But the other thing you can do is also you can look more closely at when you do your mark making. So if you look here, there's a patch here where it's starting to sort of streak and get a smear mark making rather than it being speckled like it is down here where there's not very much on there. So that smear mark making means you've got quite a lot on the surface, not too much, it's fine, but it's just starting to not quite grab the tooth in with the same texture. So that means you've probably got sufficient to start blending. So what I'm going to do next is just start to do the first blend. So I'm using 2 or 3 fingers and just doing circular movement because it's clouds. As you can see with that area there where that smear was, it's blended really, really easily. Hasn't it? You can see it's really softened that in there. Now that's quite a dark area, so what I don't want to do is then move my fingers up into some of the bright areas and I've still got sort of purple fingers. So give your fingers a quick wipe on your apron or a tea towel or something you've got nearby, and then carry on blending. Now it may not blend as easy as that everywhere, so don't worry if it doesn't. And if obviously with this sky we're doing circular blending movements because it's that sort of cloud, but when it's going to be a more sweeping sky or different fingers of light cutting through, you would do it in those directions. You wouldn't just do circular regardless. Now this is really the fun bit. I love this bit because you can just see the colours you're getting when it all mixes together and you think, oh, that's really nice, kind of pinky bruised sky colour. Or on the other hand, sometimes you can do it and think, oh, that's not quite what I was after. But it's okay. At this stage of the game, you can easily add further layers and change your colours. You can also end up brushing a bit off and working over again, so it's easily correctable, and that's really good thing about working in pastel, isn't it? You haven't got to worry too much about things being inexact. Now there's some wispy cloud between these 2 cloud banks. This area through here is quite wispy, a little bit anyway, here and there. So we're going to start off by creating that movement through. So I'm just going to use my fingers and just drag back and forward, not too far. I don't want to get the yellows into the blue and make green, but just controlling where I stop and start. But just give that a little sweep through. Right, and then some circular movements for this cloud bank through here. I'm just going to put my hand through here and just flatten that in. Okay, so that is the end of stage 1. What we've done here is just our base layer. Just to recap, first thing to do was pick out your colours and organise your palette. I like to have a separate tray going. I don't normally do this, but this is just for making it really clear what colours I'm using. Choose colours that are going to kind of flow together in a harmonious fashion, that kind of work well together because we're doing a lot of blending. Think about bridging colours between areas, so things like these pinks and lilacs bridge between the yellow and slightly orange shades and the blue purples, which would give us green if we weren't bridging that area. Apply the colour using the flat of the pastels. We're holding it between fingers and thumbs, and then placing it down and using that flat side to go over the surface. And then we get in there, sweeping mark making, getting it all on there, and then blending carefully using circular or sweeping movements, depending on which bit of cloud you're working on, and cleaning fingers in between. So control the blend, don't get carried away and do all this on it. Just blend in each area as you need to. And you should have no problem as long as you've chosen a harmonious palette. Even if it's not exactly what I've chosen, then it will still work really well. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing your outcomes and discussing progress with you.